Could the mayor of New York City have Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrested? He says he's looking into it. The Israeli leader is expected to attend the UN General Assembly in New York in September. Speaking on the New York Times The Interview podcast, Mayor Mamdani said he's having, quote, active conversations about what the law allows him to do.
You're actively looking to see if you can actually arrest him.
I think we are looking at all of our legal obligations, and one of them is with regards to the United Nations. But the other part of this is we're not talking about a personal assessment of Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about the International Criminal Court and the fact that they have a warrant out for this prime minister's arrest.
All right, with us now, CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Counselor, what does the law actually say here? What does it allow Mamdani to do?
So, Corporation Counsel, they advise the mayor. They have got some great attorneys over there, but I think when they look at the law, they will advise the mayor that he does not have the legal ability to enforce this active warrant that was issued by the International Criminal Court, right? We know this, we have this court. This court's been around for about 24 years or so. They certainly prosecute war crimes, which is their legal right and obligation, but the New York City mayor has no authority, and in fact, it's illegal for him to do so.
Who does have authority?
So you have member states and you have non-member states, right? And these member states who are actively involved, they certainly have the authority to do so. Europe is involved. They could certainly do it. You've got countries in Latin America and Africa as well. United Kingdom is a member state here. The United States is not a member state.
That's the key.
Yes, it is.
And even if the United States were a member state, would it be up to a city jurisdiction, or would it be more likely a federal case?
So it would be federal, but it would be a little bit more complicated. So here's the reality, right? There are multiple barriers that would prevent a local official from doing it. The first thing to your question is there's something called the preemption doctrine. What is that? That means that the federal government has these laws, some of which preempt local law. In this particular circumstance, the federal law would be controlling. And as a result of that, the federal law says not only can you not do it, John, but it's illegal to enforce a mandate of the International Criminal Court. In addition to that, you have something called diplomatic immunity, which is absolute. And based upon the diplomatic immunity, you certainly cannot touch Netanyahu when he came here. So it would be illegal for the mayor to do that.
So that pretty much sums it up.
Yes.
I mean, you know, and so his legal advice is going to tell him, A, this is actually a non-issue. B, you can't do this. There's no scenario then, roughly, where New York City police go and take him into custody.
There is no scenario, and in fact, John, you could be prosecuted for doing that. The law is very clear with respect to immunity. The law is very clear with regard to us not being a member state of the International Criminal Court. The law is very clear as it relates to not being able to touch Netanyahu when he comes to New York. Okay, for the mayor to question and have his very good legal counsel weigh in, but I think when they do so, they will say, Mayor, you don't have the ability to do it no matter what you may personally believe with regard to the active warrant for Mr. Netanyahu.
That's what lawyers and billable hours are for. Doesn't mean that it will not be eventful if and when the prime minister comes here in the fall. That will no doubt be a big deal.
First, what do we know about what is possible, Julia?
Right. So this does not appear on its face to be possible because, according to International Criminal Court proceedings, a country has had to agree to the Rome Statute to basically, arrest someone with an arrest warrant.
And the U.S. notoriously is not all that interested in participating in the ICC.
The Trump administration and the Biden administration have notoriously not great relationships with the ICC. That being said, though, I do find these comments fascinating because we are seeing really a decline in support of Israel from Americans across the board, across the political board. On the far left or the left, you have someone like Zohran Mamdani talking about arresting Benjamin Netanyahu. But this comes roughly a week after we saw Vice President J.D. Vance go on Joe Rogan's podcast and essentially accuse Israel of manipulating U.S. public opinion over the war.
We were talking about that, and I think the thing for me that's confusing, though, is these other people don't have this very large Jewish constituency that has been activist, and upset with the way he has talked about this issue. And I believe it was a campaign promise. But I looked at a website that had dozens of campaign promises, and most of them weren't fulfilled. Why would this be one that he would kind of talk about publicly.
It's a strange political battle to pick, especially because you think about a lot of the Jewish business leaders in New York who business leaders have threatened to leave the city.
But was that like a gotcha moment? Like, is there no way he could have said, actually, that's not something I would do because he had promised it? Did he basically have to answer that way because it was the New York Times raising it?
Oh, so you're saying, like, was he put into a corner and he has to give his most polarizing take because he's not a podcast? I mean, that's kind of been his whole campaign shtick, right? Like, putting out these incredibly sort of polarizing positions. A lot of people have questioned whether or not they're even really possible, right? And then trying to utilize that to gain public support over one group within New York. The question becomes, Audie, to your point, New York has very different constituencies. And can you run a long-term mayoral tenure while polarizing literally half the city? Like, answer is to be seen, but I think that there's no way, to Julia's point, that this is something that we should be thinking about as more than a gimmick.
Right. And at the end of the day, he can't run for president, right? So he's not thinking of like those big long-term ambitions, but he is, to me, coming off as somebody who is part of a movement and trying to be at the front of a movement that requires coming up with sentences to say, right, as a Democrat or somebody who is progressive, that will appeal to this world of the newly polled that are frustrated.
Right. You're right that he can't run for president, but he does have a constituency that is more than just New York. He does have a national political following that is very interested in what he does and very interested in his influence, and he's very interested in flexing that influence.
Yeah.
Obviously, we saw a lot of that in the New York races. Who knows whether that expands in the future? But this is an issue that is so critical to the base of the Democratic Party. So he's continuing, even if it's not legal, to tap into that.
The leader of a key U.S. ally in this war, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as you know, Congressman, is scheduled to travel to New York City, where you are, for the United Nations General Assembly in September. But your city's Democratic mayor, Zohran Mamdani, now says his office is looking into the possibility of actually arresting him during that visit because the prime minister is a, quote, war criminal. That's what he says, who belongs in The Hague. That's where the International Criminal Court is based. Do you support or oppose what Mamdani is threatening to do?
Yeah, well, look, the United Nations is for all leaders to come to the United States, for them to have a chance to talk to the collective body, whether you agree with them or not. I have had on other sides with other folk to say that they should have had the right to come to the UN, and they did, to speak to the United Nations in that regards. And people have the right to speak out loudly against what they may say and represent. That's fine. But I think the mayor has also walked that back some. I saw a quote where he said that he does not intend to violate federal law or existing law, and looking for other laws, as President Trump sometimes does, tries to go around the law, and that he understands that the UN's functions needs to continue to move forward and let the UN take care of its business. And so I think that the mayor should make sure that he's not arresting anyone at this point.